We read again from the 10th chapter of Mark, beginning with the 35th verse. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever it is we ask of you." "What do you want me to do for you?" "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." And Jesus responded, "You don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am?" "We can." And Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with my baptism. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." And when the other 10 heard about this, they were angry with James and John. But Jesus called them all together and said to them, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be a slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but only to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." The word from the Lord in the house of the Lord. Now, in 8:30, we took in some new members. Anybody want to join today? Otherwise, scheduled all screwed up. Give me 5 minutes, and then I'll start my sermon. Oh, no, we're not going to wait that long. You guys won't hang around that long. Isn't it like a lot of us? I went out for football. My mother was concerned about me being hurt, probably like most mothers, because she would not let me go out for football till I weighed 100 pounds. And when I became a sophomore, I lied about my weight and went out for football. Now, I'll tell you how good I was. I was an all-state center. Well, I see disbelief in your eyes. I was a center. I played center on the football team. I got all the way up to 121 pounds before I quit playing football. But I knew when I went out for football, I was going to be the makings of an All-American quarterback, because I could probably pass better than anybody in the world, and I could run faster, and found out I could do neither. But I knew I was going to be first string, and I wasn't. I knew there were all of these wonderful things that were preordained for me because I loved the game. I knew how to play the game. I only lacked speed, agility, size, and courage. Other than that, I would have been a great football player. And that's what James and John wanted. They wanted somebody to make them all-American before they started. Wanted someone to promise them the world before they had taken their first step. And sometimes we get into a feeling of being able or being deserving of things without any proof of it. Sometimes we make sure that we don't prove how good we are, but we're always allowed to talk a good game. We're always allowed to present ourselves so that you think, "Oh, there's probably a guy." What do you see when you see somebody walk in with a violin case? No, maybe not a violin case, because that might be a machine gun. I came from the Chicago area, so how about a horn case? You think, here comes a musician, right? And you believe that up until the moment they put the horn to their lips and prove one thing or the other. Because the proof is always in the pudding. The proof is always in performing as you're expected to perform. James and John wanted to be first stringers. They wanted to be all-American without having to prove anything. And all it did was make everybody else angry. 10 years ago, I guess it was 10 years, the year that the Olympics were in Beijing, we took a tour in China, and we found out something about the Asian culture that I hadn't realized before. You know how when you drive down the road, you're supposed to keep a car length between you and the next one for every 10 mile an hour you drive or whatever? And if you do that in Phoenix, there's 7 cars in there. Well, if you leave a space big enough for one person in front of you in a line in China, it's filled with 27 Chinese. They don't wait in line. They get in line. Wherever the line is, they get in it wherever they want to. We got right up to the ticket counter to buy tickets to go into the aquarium, and suddenly we weren't first in line anymore. But that's the way they live. It's the way they expect it to be. And so often we get into a different situation in our lives and we fail to realize that what we expect is not that which is. And what Christ was pointing out to James and John is that his love is perfect. There are no favorites in his life. Even though John wrote in the book that supposedly he authored that he is the disciple whom Jesus loved. As we read, we understand that Jesus loved us, each and every one of us, whether we're one of the original 12 or not. But John wrote the one who he loved. And they wanted to be loved more than anyone else. And that isn't the way Jesus works. Oh, there are some people who seem to be totally blessed. Some people who never have to face the crisis in their life. And yet when you look at their life, you realize, just like yours and mine, every day is a crisis. Every day is a confrontation with that which might happen. Not that which does, but that which might happen. And so we face these kinds of things. And what Jesus reminded James and John was that you're not going to earn perfection. You're not going to earn a place. God will decide on the merits of the life and the love that you have shared throughout the time here on earth. We just sang, "These are my neighbors from God." And everyone's a neighbor from God. You know, we don't have to always like your neighbors. We don't like the things they do. We don't like the music they play. We don't like the parties they throw late at night across the fairway. I can't name names, can I? But we are expected to be able to love each other. It's demanded of us. It's required of us. It's difficult for us. Because not everybody's lovable. But God said his love encompasses everyone. And he expects us to be in that same category. In Job, the conversation was between God and Job, because Job had just complained about how everything was and how things should be different. And God points out, were you there when I put the stars in the sky? Were you there when I firmed up the world? Were you there when I split the ground and the ocean? No. We weren't there at the beginning. We weren't even there at the beginning of our own life. We had little to do with conception. We had almost nothing to do with birth. Most of us had a little to do with growing up. That belonged to 2 other people or 1 other person in our lives. But God is a disciplinarian who says, I want you to love your neighbors. Jesus' comment simply was, the first commandment is that you will love your Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your being, and have no other gods before him. And the other great commandment is that you will love your neighbor as I have loved you. But he expresses it differently in another place, where he said, you will love your neighbors as you love yourself. He demands that we understand ourselves a little bit. He demands that we know how to love ourselves so that we can have an opportunity and the possibility of loving others. Because if we don't learn how to love by loving ourselves first, we'll never learn how to love those neighbors who just aren't quite lovable down the street or across the road or in another land. But our task is not easy. Being a Christian's a tough job. It ought to be, it's built on love, so it ought to be just as easy as can be. But I think back that the discipline that we need to be a Christian. My dad I've talked about him a lot because he meant a lot to me. He was quite a disciplinarian. One time in a foray in the winter, I drove the pickup up to the neighbor's house because he played the trumpet, I played the clarinet, and we were going to practice together. And on the way home, I spun it out on the ice and rolled it over in the ditch and back up on its wheels. And so I had to walk home, which is about a quarter of a mile or a little more, and wait for my folks to get home, wondering what my dad was going to say. Well, he got there, and we got the tractor, and we went down, and we pulled the pickup out of the ditch. And he said, well, take it home. You put it here, take it home. I said, I'll drive the tractor. He said, no, take it home. And the next day when we were doing chores, he said, well, I hope you learned something about driving on ice last night. And that's the last thing he ever said about it. My mother, on the other hand, remembered it for several years. God expects us to learn from the experiences we have in life. God expects us to know things because we have experienced things. And once we've experienced true love, I don't mean romantic love, but once we've experienced the ability to care for other people, even those neighbors that we don't know, He expects us to always do it. Because we should have learned how, we should never forget how. And that's what He was trying to explain to James and John. You don't earn a place here or here. You don't get to be all-American by birth. You don't get to do these things because you want them. You get to do them because you have performed as you are expected to perform. And the tough thing about God is He doesn't write out a whole list of things. You know, if we had 25 things to do, we could check them off. And we hit all 25, we'd know we're okay, we're safe. But we would check them off in our judgment, not His. And He doesn't give you 25. He gives you one task. He gives you one job. He gives you one measurement. And that's to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love your neighbor as He has loved you. And there are a lot of days I don't quite get it done. Maybe you can do it every day. But there's some days you get up in the morning and you don't even like yourself, let alone love the neighbors. But God is always there to pick you up. God is always there to whisper in your ear, I hope you learned something about life today, by what happened in your life today. But He's never far away. He's always there to be one with you. James and John wanted a promise of greatness, promise of honor. And Jesus said, no, you earn your honor in your heart, not in somebody else's measure. You earn the honor in your ability to follow the two commandments. Love your God, love your neighbor. Love. Amen. You have a seat next to God. You've earned it? No. He's given it. Just as He's given to you His peace, the peace of being one with who gave Himself, that you might know that you are saved. You are home. You are loved. Amen. Amen.